This is Perspectives, a bi-weekly investment podcast brought to you by Escala Partners. In a world cluttered with information, Perspectives cuts through the noise to bring you insights and commentary on global financial markets, economics, and geopolitical news and events.
Hello and welcome. I'm Tracey McNaughton, the CIO at Escala Partners. I'm joined today by Mark Middleton, the CEO of Icon Group. Icon is an integrated cancer care provider operating across Australia, New Zealand, Singapore, Hong Kong, mainland China, and the UK. Icon Group is a significant operator, particularly in the private radiation oncology market in Australia. In 2022, Mark was awarded the Medal of the Order of Australia for his contributions to Australian cancer care. Thank you so much, Mark, for joining me today. I know how very busy you are.
Thank you very much, Tracy. It's always nice to be invited. So thank you for inviting me.
So I wonder if we can kick off with, can you tell us about your journey as a founder to startup?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, look, I'm a radiation therapist by background, which means I originally planned and treated cancer patients with radiation. Grew up in regional Victoria, which I think is an important part of the story, and then sort of followed my dream to work overseas in cancer care in Canada and the United Kingdom, which funnily enough also becomes an important part of the story, before being part of the foundation of our very first radiation oncology facility in Toowoomba in 2007. So in regional Queensland, we were one of the first groups to take radiotherapy and indeed world-class cancer care to regional Australia. And from there to 2025 is, I guess, an incredible journey of growth and a commitment to improving cancer care for people in Australia and beyond. And I think what our growth has shown is just where we were in cancer care 15 to 20 years ago in Australia was a very, very different landscape to what we have now.
So I've been told that while the early stage of a startup is often highlighted as the most challenging, the real battle really begins when you're trying to scale. Is that something that you would agree with?
Yeah, look, absolutely. I mean, the startup phase when it's going well, it's obviously incredibly enjoyable, which we were very fortunate that we grew very quickly under our own private ownership and soon realised that we had a very compelling product, if you will, and a great team, many of whom are still with me today. So we knew very quickly that we had something very special. But when it became time, I actually think the hardest part of this was when it became time, and this is a dilemma for all founders, came time to actually, in our case, have private equity invest in us at the time. I found that incredibly confronting and a sort of a difficult process to go through. However, once we were through it, I soon realised this is the best decision I've ever made. And given I'm on my third private equity partner, it was the right decision, and we've only continued to go from strength to strength. Look, I would say, Tracy, parts of the journey for the founder are always really different. The biggest problem I have for founders is that feeling as you are giving up control and you will lose control, which will dilute your vision or your strategy. I've been very fortunate and I've been able to partner with private equity groups who've ultimately shared that vision and that strategy. And I think that's an important part of the conversation. So, look, all parts of the journey can be equally difficult. I wouldn't say the startup phase is the most difficult, though.
Why did you choose? Because in terms of growth, there are multiple avenues and multiple ways of getting capital. Why did you choose, or did Icon choose to go down the private equity route instead of, say, a public listing?
Well, I think from my own personal perspective and where we were at the time, we had 3 radiotherapy centres, 2 under construction, and I had 3 business partners who are all 20 years older than me. So we needed a succession plan, and for us, that really came about by we had an opportunity to build a cancer centre in Melbourne. And it was a great opportunity, but my 3 business partners were understandably less enthusiastic about it than me, particularly if it meant mortgaging their homes to fund. And cancer care requires a lot of capital, so that was really, we needed a succession plan. We certainly weren't big enough to contemplate a public listing. And we also knew we had a pipeline of growth identified, and we knew that private equity would be able to fund that growth because there's such a clear lack of supply across Australia for really high quality cancer care, particularly in regional Australia. So I think what we needed the financial backing, private equity partner, but we also needed the agility of a private equity partner with a founder group to move really, really quickly to grab the opportunities and to really be the first mover in that space.
You've had a few private equity partners, Goldman Sachs, Asset Management, QIC, Pagoda Investment, and now you've got EQT. What lessons have you learnt along the way in these relationships? And I guess also, how did you determine which private equity partner was best for you?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a great question, Tracy. Now, we started with Quadrant Private Equity, who are an Australian fund who very, very good partners and did great work with us and, still have a great relationship with those guys and they continue to do great work. So I should really make that clear. They were the right partner at the right time for who we are and what we needed to do in Australia. Added a lot of agility, a lot of process, some strategic thinking, and really rolled their sleeves up to get behind the business. Then, we were quite big very, very quickly, and it was $1 billion transaction as we went to Goldman Sachs, QIC, and Pagoda, who bought a different flavour at the time. And I think I'm going to answer the question as we move through this journey. When Goldman Sachs and QIC and Pagoda invested in us in 2017, all roads led to Asia and growth in Asia, particularly for cancer care. Goldman Sachs, our team based out of Hong Kong, obviously unique insights into Singapore, Hong Kong, mainland China, etc., which really allowed us to accelerate our growth into Asia. And then, of course, we were also backed by QIC, who have, just like Icon, incredible Queensland heritage, based here in Brisbane and effectively invested in very significantly by the Queensland government, who we've continued to have a tremendous relationship with. So I think what I'm really saying is the right partner at the right stage of your growth. Now, in March 22, when EQT invested in us, I knew our next phase of growth would be into the United Kingdom and ultimately Europe. And of course, now we have this partner headquartered in Stockholm with this not only deep European heritage, but deep healthcare investment capability. So it's about choosing the right partner for the right phase of growth. And I think what we've been very fortunate to do is identify partners who were right for us right there. Quadrant, fast-moving consolidation. Goldman Sachs, QIC, Pagoda, growth into Asia. EQT, growth into a truly global oncology organisation with the view of being the world's most trusted cancer care provider. So I think also in terms of selection, it doesn't always just come down to who's going to pay the most money. It's also about who shares a vision, who shares a strategy, who do we think will be a great partner for our leadership team and our clinicians. And that's really, really important. Healthcare businesses are built on relationships and trust. You've got to trust your private equity partner. And I think what EQT has shown over the 3 years they've been with us is they are a very, very good healthcare investor, and they do believe very, very strongly in clinical governance and ensuring that we give our doctors the best place to provide care. And that's exactly what we've done. If you can do that in healthcare, the rest of the success follows.
I've heard you talk about that trust point previously. Has there been any missteps along the way where it's made you aware just how important the trust is?
Look, I think that my biggest sort of takeaway on that trust question is you build trust via alignment and complete transparency on discussions. Now, we've been very fortunate over the journey to have very, very strong relationships with our private equity partners. And I'd like to think that has been built and led by myself because I have a commitment to transparency and authenticity as well on how we approach healthcare. And what I expect from a private equity partner is they're going to be honest and upfront. And even if those even if the direction or the alignment diverges slightly, which can happen from time to time, if you can have relationships built on trust and alignment, you can manage those. You can't manage those discussions if they're not on the table. So the biggest part for me is trust and transparency, robust discussions, and being prepared to call out with your private equity partner anything that you think is really, really important. And you can do that if you build strong relationships. I see this as exactly the same as the relationships that myself and our leadership group need to have with our clinicians. You can have difficult conversations if you have a good relationship. They're very difficult to have if you have a very bad relationship. So I have always overcompensated on alignment and transparency with the private equity partner. And you need to really have that conversation on day one. If you do, and I said to the EQT guys at the start, we will win because of the alignment between us and yourselves, and we will deliver a great outcome if we can have that alignment and be prepared to have the discussions when we're not aligned. And that's exactly what we've done. And EQT has been an amazing partner to us over the last 3 years, and I'm sure and I hope I will continue to work with them on projects well past their involvement with ICON.
How does that relationship work with EQT? Do you sort of come up and say, listen, we've got a growth strategy, we want to go here. What do you think? Do you have the resources to help us? Is that how the relationship works?
No, I think it can with particular, private equity partners, but I think our relationship with EQT is more structured and formalised than that, in that from the moment they invested in us in March 2022, we spent 4 months working on what was our ambition for ICON and what we would call what's our full potential plan. So if we had unlimited capital, what could ICON be? And dare to dream, if you will. And we spent 4 months doing that. And that's our 5-year strategy. We're now 3 years in. And that is a great tool for building alignment and also building a cohesive team approach to how we deliver this growth. Now, importantly, it's management's strategy. So it's our strategy. But what EQT have been able to do is add value when they feel that it does. And then also, of course, buy into the strategy and support it. And ultimately, we took that strategy to our board to approve it, which they did. And now everyone is aligned chasing that strategy. And what that strategy is also about, all the things we would do, but also importantly, all things we won't do. And what that means is you're not getting a different idea every 5 minutes on what strategy should be, which I think management teams can struggle with. You've still got to be agile and you've still be able to pivot. Things change over a 3 to 5 year period. But fundamentally, we have a 5-year strategy that we're now 3 years into that we are executing. And look, so far, so good. So it's absolutely laid out at the start, which I think is really important because, again, it builds relationships, it builds trusts, and it builds alignment.
Thank you. That's interesting. Can we go on to culture now?
Yep.
And talk about that? You have teams in multiple locations. How hard is the culture the same across in each location, in each office? How do you ensure some kind of consistency to get the ICON culture?
Well, I think culture ultimately comes down to leadership, and I certainly expect a lot from my leadership team on culture, which means you live the ICON values every single day, and you live our mission, which is the best care possible to as many people as possible, as close to home as possible. So one of the great challenges, I think, for founders who've built really strong cultures, and I'd like to think I can sit in that category, is that as you get bigger, you've got to protect that culture every single day, because cultures are under attack every single day. There's so many things that move and so many things can change. And, we're also in the very, very important business of cancer care, where at the heart of it, there is a patient, there is their family, and there is a community who has expectations of us as an organisation, and by extension, all of our staff and all of our clinicians. So look, the culture is really, really strong at ICON. It is not the same in every single location, and I think that is also healthy because there is a different flavour. The Singaporean and Malaysian teams, for example, completely bought into the ICON culture. They live and breathe it every single day, but it also has their local flavour. And I think that's really important. Our teams in China, again, I was really worried about having a team in China. It's hard, it's complex, it's a very different culture. But I have a WeChat group with our team in China, and their embrace of our culture is unbelievable. So, and then of course you have the UK, where Australians and our British brothers and sisters obviously are very closely related in so many ways. But again, the culture needs to have a slight different nuance. But our values and what we're about, our mission and delivering great patient care, must be the same. And what I love seeing is people, and I think an important part of culture is having that, that cross pollination of people from different countries being in other countries and being part of that. We've done that really successfully in Singapore. We've done it incredibly successful now in the UK. We also did it in China. We had a group of Australian radiation therapists on the ground originally. So you've got to work really, really hard at culture. But the culture starts with me. I have to live those values. I have to believe in those values, and I do. And I have to believe in the mission. The ICON mission is why I get out of bed every single day. And I think the day that that's not the founder's mission or the founder's motivation is probably the time to hand the keys over to someone else. You've got to be passionate about your culture. You've got to believe in what you're doing, and you've got to build teams that also believe in that. And for me, that also is about, we're very fortunate. We've had many people in our team have been together for a long time, but we have also added new talent, new capabilities, and new perspectives along the way that strengthen the culture. So culture is critical. I'm passionate about it, and it takes a long time to get it right and a very short time to get it wrong.
Interesting. What's the most important characteristic, do you think, of a leader?
Authenticity. People have to see you, believe in you, be able to approach you at any time. And when you tell them what you're going to do, that's what you deliver on. So, which fundamentally all come down to words like trust. Look, I like to say a lot, Tracey, ICON is a really innovative, progressive organisation. We've done some incredible things, but gee, we're built on some old-fashioned values: loyalty, respect, trust, relationships. And we don't always get all of those things right, but we never stop striving to get it right. And I'd like to think that the people who've been with us on the journey not only have had great professional development, but also developed personally as well. We are a leadership factory. We've been developing leaders and sending people further afield into our organisation and beyond, and I'm really proud of that as well. If you look at the people in cancer care, leading cancer care around the world now, there's a fairly heavy ICON flavour.
I was reading the CEO of Airbnb has said that being a founder is intuitive, but being a good CEO and leader is not. In other words, that it has to be learned. Is that something that resonates with you?
I would have to say I completely disagree.
Right.
Being a founder is being founder is intuitive, but it also has to be learned. I had to learn the responsibility of a founder over a period of time, and it's something that's really important to me. But I don't. I think, and we could have a whole debate about are leaders born or learnt. I truly believe great leaders are born. There is absolutely an innate capability in some people that they are born with. And I think you can see it really clearly. They continue to learn and add to that. And then you do have people who become leaders over time and learn, but it doesn't come naturally. So, and I think that those are the people who you can develop, but I can tell who's going to be a great leader pretty quickly. And I think you can tell it very, very early. What's the old saying? Give me the boy and I'll show you the man. I think leadership talent can be identified really early. And in fact, I think we're a great example of identifying that leadership talent, nurturing it, and being great beneficiaries from it.
How do you identify it? Do you have ways of measuring, or how do you identify leadership early?
I observe, I watch,
Okay.
I see people in positions, and they're not even informal positions of leadership. I watch how people respond to them. I watch this great leader's capability of taking people on the journey, of being able to articulate a mission and a narrative and a story, and people buying into that. You can see it really, really early. But I also see things like the one percenters, people who remember everyone's name, the people who say good morning to every single member of their team every single morning, the people who know and take an interest what their teams are doing outside of work. Those, and I call them one percenters, probably not one percenters, they're more than one percenters, but those things matter. It's intentional leadership and they really matter, and people respond to it and follow that leader. So we could probably do another podcast just on this topic. Yeah, I've been a student of leadership my entire life, and I think you learn everywhere you go. You're out for dinner in a restaurant, you're going to see if there's leadership in that restaurant. You're somewhere, you walk into, I can walk into a workplace, I can tell very quickly if the leadership's strong or not, because when a workplace is struggling, I can tell you the fundamental is the leadership.
And so what do you do in that case? If you have walked into a workplace where it is struggling, what sort of things would you do
Well, they're
to
never
fix
icon
that?
ones, Tracey. Am I allowed to say that? They're never icon ones.
Yeah, yeah.
No, look, I think we have become very good over the years at, calling issues pretty quickly. And if the leadership's not working, we'll make a change. We do like to give people a chance, obviously, but we also choose really wisely. And I think it also just comes down to, and I think this is you do need to develop your own leaders as founders. And I think you also need to private equity invested businesses as well. I think that sometimes there's a really short window of those investments. So you want to get the best talent you possibly can in a short period of time. You've got to be preparing for that in creating leaders. Because, I think I mentioned this the last time we spoke as well, that, I think there's often a view that you can take someone who's been successful in another field and put them into healthcare, for example. It can work, but most of the time it doesn't work. And you think what you think is a really, really short-term fix doesn't necessarily go the way you want it to go. I've always been a believer in giving new and young leaders an opportunity in a managed framework so that they can win and succeed. And then, if you looked at our depth of our leadership now across Icon, you can see there's been people who are in global roles who've worked their way through. My chief of staff, and who's also our chief transformation officer, Tracey McNaughton. She's built more cancer centres than anyone else on earth. She came to Icon a decade ago to manage an accreditation program. So these are great stories, and these are, I could repeat those stories on and on and on for individuals in my team who will go on to ultimately, I suspect, be CEOs and leaders of their own companies at the right time. You've got to create your own leaders. Sometimes, as leaders, we forget that responsibility of the next generation of leaders. And for founders, it's even more important, because at some point, you've got to hand the keys to a business that you are incredibly emotionally attached to, even though you've probably sold down over time and are not the majority shareholder. That emotional attachment is really important. And at some point, you've either got to decide to hand the keys over or be told to hand the keys over. And you need great people waiting there to receive those keys.
That's so inspirational, Mark. Really impressive. What's next for Icon? The next, you say you're 3 years into your 5-year plan. What's next?
Well, absolutely. And it's an incredibly exciting time. I think, we made an acquisition in the UK of a chemotherapy compounding business, which is going really well. We acquired our first cancer centre in London, Icon Cancer Centre London, which has a great ring to it. And we've got a partnership with Nuffield Health, big not-for-profit hospital network, to continue to roll out cancer care, which is exactly what we've done with partners in Australia. So look, we're really excited by the UK. We've got great leadership on the ground there. We're building great teams. There's no shortage of people who want to work with Icon in the UK, which is incredibly pleasing. And we continue to grow in Asia. We've got some really exciting things coming in Asia. And then, of course, there's still places in Australia that have a real lack of world-class cancer care. And you're going to see us announcing that. In fact, we'll open in Ipswich very, very soon. We'll have another facility opening in North Adelaide, and we've brought some more technology to Brisbane with a gamma knife, which is an incredible piece of technology. And we also have a cyber knife opening in Melbourne. So there's no shortage of opportunities. We've never been busier or more excited, and that's saying something because we've had some busy and exciting times. So much more to come, so many more great things to talk about, and so many more people to help.
Well, that's fantastic, Mark. And the picture that you're describing there, I'm not surprised that so many people want to work at Icon, and you're such an inspirational leader. So thank you so much for giving us your time. I know that you are extremely busy, to say the least. So we do appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you, Tracey. It's great to speak with you. And I always love sharing the Icon story and the great difference our people are making to cancer care now all over the world.
Thank you for listening to Escala Partners Perspectives podcast. Be sure to subscribe to this podcast on iTunes. You can connect with Tracey by visiting escalapartners.com.au. Escala Partners is a corporate authorised representative of Escala Wealth Management, which holds its own AFSL. This podcast has been prepared without consideration of specific client investment objectives, financial situation, or needs, and is for general information purposes only. Please don't rely on it for the purpose of making an investment decision. You should seek independent financial and taxation advice prior to making any investment decisions in relation to any of the content considered in the podcast, and consider any relevant disclosure documents. If you require any further information regarding the matters discussed on the podcast, please contact Escala Partners.